about ecological concepts now. In the succeeding topics, we're going to discuss some of ecological aspect as well as its underlying environmental issues and the policies that governs or addresses this particular issue. So for topic number three, we're going to discuss natural resources and what are some of the human impacts in terms of the utilization of natural resources, as well as how we manage natural resource use that is depending on the type of resources that we are utilizing. So we cannot deny the fact that we are too much dependent of the resources available in nature, so there are tendencies that we need or we are extracting them from their source. So this picture shows you how some of the natural resources of the earth are being extracted for human use, and most probably can also recognize the effects of the extraction process on the different types of habitats and different types of ecosystem. So both on the terrestrial as well as in aquatic ecosystem. So I am sure that you are aware of that. So as travel management students, so I guess one of the impacts of this particular extraction is actually affecting the aesthetic value of the environment. Okay, so talking about aesthetic value, there are instances that, or there is a specific, what you call so-called specific phrase that goes economic invisibility of nature, wherein we tend to neglect some of the values of the ecosystem that it provides us. For example, the aesthetic value. So that aesthetic value, we don't have a price for that. But then, as tourism students or travel management students, so there are different tourist locations, particularly within nature, which is available for tourism. So we tend to have budget for that, for travel, and of course for paying the entrance fee, the accommodation for that specific location. Okay, so there are things like that. So we usually forgot to value some of those important aspects of having beautiful sceneries as well as having the intact natural resources within nature. So, natural resources are any form of matter or energy obtained from the physical environment. Of course, we are anthropocentric, so that meets human needs. So, most of the natural resources that we have today are being created by human ingenuity, or basically, it is because of human manipulation or human creation, kumbaga. So, there are some certain things that we need, and then that particular need, in order to address that, we need to extract some of the raw materials that is being needed in order to provide or to produce that particular resource. Okay, so that is specifically the meaning of that. So natural resources are often classified as renewable and non-renewable. So yung napapalitan at hindi na po napapalitan. So renewable resources are generally living resources which can restock or renew. For example, our food that we eat or the food that we eat. Yan. So there are instances, since we knew that it's renewable, we tend to um, overconsume or over-harvest it. At the same time, there are instances that um, uh, there are wastes, okay, more waste of renewable resources, since we have this mindset that it is being replaced. Okay, however, we do not have this mindset that natural resources are not equally distributed across the different parts of the earth. So I am sure that you are aware there's what we so called areas that suffering from hunger, of course poverty. Ayan. So we do not realize that. And of course, we have the renewable resources. So this is a natural resource that cannot be remade or regrown, or it took time, primarily several years or million years, to be replaced. Kaya considered siya as non-renewable resources. Okay, so I hope these two classification of natural resources is clear to you. For natural resources can also be classified as biotic and abiotic resources. The same is true with the components of the ecosystem. Resources or natural resources can be living or non-living. So you have for living, primarily, we depend on food. Okay, so that's the best example of biotic resources. And of course, we have abiotic resources, for example, the minerals that we tend to mine or extract from the nature, which is the raw material for the most common products that we use, like toothpaste and more. Okay, so renewable resources for terrestrial resources. We have forest resources, the biggest sink of, or the biggest area of natural resources that we tend to extract. And of course, we have aquatic resources. Primarily, we depend too much on water, particularly potable water. Okay, so we are going to discuss some of the renewable resources present in um, these type of ecosystem. So you have a forest, terrestrial, in the Philippines, we are known for having the tropical rainforest, and together with this are vast amount or vast number of organisms adapted to that particular ecosystem. So in the previous lecture, we discussed tropical rainforest as the most productive type of forest in the terrestrial biome. It is because of the greater variation of because of higher biodiversity that can be found in this particular ecosystem. So most common the food that we eat, the timber for furnitures that we extract, and of course the land that is being occupied by these forests. So we cannot deny the fact that deforestation is happening. And one of the major factors that contributes to deforestation is the expansion of agricultural lands, and that is related to food production. And if we try to root for the cause of that increase in food demand, it is because of the increasing number or increasing um, rapid increase in the population, human population to be exact. Okay, yeah. So aside from the what we so called the direct resources that we tend to use um, from the forest is actually okay. Forests actually considered as lungs of the earth. It is because one of the major carbon sink, particularly carbon dioxide sink, um, where that absorbs carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, are actually the forest ecosystem. So we all know the process of photosynthesis. So plants tend to use carbon dioxide as their carbon source to produce energy in the form of sugar. So pag tinanggal mo, for example, pag dinude mo ang forest or nagkaroon ka ng forest clearing, okay, so there is a specific amount of carbon dioxide that cannot be absorbed now from the atmosphere. Okay, and we all know that carbon dioxide is a type of greenhouse gas causing again a problem on climate change. Particularly, before climate change, you have global warming. Okay, and aside from that, there is a lower amount of oxygen being produced. This is because after plants use carbon dioxide, they produce what? Oxygen. Okay, so technically they are part of the producers of oxygen that we breathe. Okay, so the world's environment owes much of its state of health to the presence of forests. So too does human survival and welfare. Okay, so one of the characteristics of forest ecosystem, aside from having or producing natural resources needed by man, you have also what we so-called regeneration process. But this particular regeneration will take time. In this case, after 5 years, for example, there are secondary species or primary species of trees that can grow on that particular forest clearing area. So 50 to 100 years to flower and bear fruit. So kung titingnan nyo, it takes time when you try to clear the forest. It takes a, a number of years for that particular forest to regenerate, and you cannot expect that the original composition of the forest will parang babubuo siya ulit. Okay? It is because there is what we so-called succession process. Okay? And then you cannot have the original forest composition when it is already deforested. Okay? Ayan. So, however, the forests have this characteristic of regeneration. Okay? So, there are instances, for example, in the parts of Mount Apo, during our during the event of earthquake, there are landslides. So these are actually natural forces that causes forest clearing, but then it will still undergo the process of regeneration, wherein another set of species will occur in that area. So what seems to be the problem, as what I have said, is actually the illegal logging or forest clearing in order to cater the needs of human beings, cater for timber, cater for land, agriculture land for production of economically important crops, for food. Okay. So these are the associated problems. Forest clearings, you have the monoculture, for example, you have a rubber plantation, yan, um, oil palm plantation, and other plantation crops. Okay, so we tend to clear forests for that. Yeah, illegal logging. Yan. Yan. Expansion of agricultural lands in mountainous areas, clearing the forest. Yan. So, in terms of forest management, the first trend entails the nearly complete conversion of original forest into another system that better suits the material or economic needs of those who decides to manage the system. This is what I am referring to. Um, if what is the mindset of the decision makers on how to manage the forest ecosystem primarily at their um, or considering the benefits, not considering the benefits for long term, do you call this, the long term ecological plans. Okay, so nakasalalay ang klase ng management kung sino ang nagmamanage. Yun ang ibig sabihin ng number one. So if he wants it to have a monoculture, or to have a agroforestry, for example, combination of important crops as well as the original composition of the forest, that lies to the hands of those who manage the forest ecosystem. The second trend of forest management through extraction of some of their products without severely disturbing the system. Ito yung trend nung sa ibang part or sa ibang areas na may forests under the protected areas. Okay? May mga ganitong klase. So they can extract natural resources or resources from the forest without disturbing the system. So there is no over exploitation as well as over extraction of resources. So there is still a partial conservation process. Okay? So, paunti-unti lang yung pag-extract ng resources. And the third one is total preservation. Ibig sabihin that there is no utilization of resources in that particular area. It is because one main reason for that is that there are a lot of endangered species in that particular forest that need to be preserved. Okay? Ayan. Or yung mga natitirang representative species na mga plants and animals are found in that particular forest ecosystem, kaya sila ay kailangan i-limit or i-eradicate ang utilization ng resources on that particular area. Okay. In terms of the policies concerning or addressing problems of forest ecosystem, we have a lot actually, but I don't know with the enforcement of these um, policies, particularly on anti-illegal logging. So we have RA number 9175, possession, sale, importation, and use of chainsaws. Okay, that's for logging of trees. We have RA 3701, an act to discourage destruction of forests, further amending the purpose of 2751 of the revised administrative code. So as you can see, this is for policies for illegal logging, and you have other policies. You have PD 389, the Forestry Reform Code. Okay, sustainable utilization of forest resources. Okay, PD 330 and PD 923 for illegal logging or cutting of trees. If there is a need, or if there is a need to extract timber, particularly through logging, um, a corporation or a private individual should secure a permit to log within the DNR. And even for road widening projects, if there is a tree to be cut, there's a proper permit to be secured in order to cut that particular tree. Okay, FYI. So there's PD 331, laws requiring all public forests to be developed in a sustained yield basis. Dito papasok yung sa tourism part. If there is a tourist attraction or i-develop mo siya as tourist um, or for tourism, so you need to undergo or you need to follow the rules stipulated in PD 331. And for those forest ecosystems that is used for tourism purposes, there should be or there should be what we so called environmental fee to be implemented. Kaya ang some of the um, ano tourist areas ay nagbabayad tayo ng environmental fee. It is because of this.